They fail because they cannot control themselves. They react, they panic, they explain, they explode. This audiobook is about one decision: master emotional control or stay average forever. High performers don't win because they feel motivated. They win because they stay calm when others lose control. They move silently while emotional people burn energy reacting to noise. If you cannot control your emotions, you will never control your income, your relationships, or your future. This is not motivation. This is training. Listen closely and listen repeatedly. Chapter 1: Stop reacting. Emotional people lose first. Most people think their reactions are just who they are. They say, "That's my personality." That is a lie. You were taught to protect your weakness. Reactions are not personality traits. Reactions are trained habits, and anything that is trained can be untrained. That's the key. Every time you react without thinking, you give something away. You give away control. You give away leverage. You give away your future position. Reaction is surrender. Control is power. Look around. The loudest person in the room is never the most powerful. The angriest person is never the one in charge. The emotional one is always the easiest to manipulate. You have a choice. You can react like everyone else, or you can pause and rise above them. Most people never pause. They feel something and immediately act on it. Anger becomes words. Fear becomes avoidance. Insecurity becomes explanation. And that is why they lose first. Emotional people lose negotiations before they begin. They lose respect in conversations. They lose money, time, and dignity without even realizing it. Not because they are weak, but because they are predictable. Predictability is death in a competitive world. High performers understand something early. The first person to react loses. In business, the one who stays calm controls the deal. In conflict, the one who pauses controls the frame. Life, the one who doesn't emotionally spike controls the outcome. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be faster. You need to be calmer. That's not personality. That's discipline. Most reactions come from a single illusion: urgency. Your mind tells you, respond now or lose. Say something now or you look weak. Defend yourself now or they win. That voice is lying to you. Urgency is the enemy of power. Calm is the signal of control. When someone insults you, you don't owe them a response. When someone pressures you, you don't owe them speed. When something goes wrong, you don't owe the world your panic. You don't need their permission. That's the key. Let's break this down simply. Every emotional reaction follows a pattern: stimulus, feeling, action. Most people live on autopilot. They never interrupt the pattern. They go straight from feeling to action. High performers insert a pause: stimulus, pause, decision. That pause is everything. That pause is where power lives. Reaction is surrender. Control is power. When you pause, you reclaim authority over yourself. You stop being dragged by emotion. You start choosing your response. And choice is the foundation of freedom. Here's the truth no one tells you: your emotions are not designed to make you successful. They are designed to keep you safe. But safety and success are not the same thing. Fear tells you to avoid. Anger tells you to attack. Ego tells you to defend. Discipline tells you to wait. And waiting, done correctly, beats all three. Think about the last time you reacted emotionally. Maybe you sent a message you regretted. Maybe you raised your voice. Maybe you tried to explain yourself. Ask yourself one question: did that reaction improve your position? Most of the time, the answer is no, because reactions are about relief, not results. They make you feel better for a moment, then they cost you later. It's not about anger, it's about control. It's not about sensitivity, it's about discipline. That's the key. The world is full of emotionally reactive people. They argue online, they overshare, they vent publicly, and they wonder why they are ignored, overlooked, and underpaid. High performers move differently. They feel the same emotions you do, they just don't obey them. That's the difference. You have a choice. You can let your emotions vote on every decision, or you can demote them to advisors. Advisors don't decide, they inform. Control is not suppression. Control is leadership. You lead your emotions. They do not lead you. Here is a practical rule to install immediately. Delay every reaction by 10 seconds. 10 seconds of silence. 10 seconds of breathing, 10 seconds of observation. That delay will save you years of damage. When someone challenges you, pause. When something triggers you, pause. When you feel the urge to defend, explain, or explode, pause. You don't need to win the moment. You need to win the trajectory. That's the key. The strongest people are not cold. They are controlled. They choose when to speak. They choose when to act. They choose when to walk away. And because of that, people listen when they do speak. Reaction is surrender, control is power. Say it again. Reaction is surrender, control is power. Burn that into your mind. Because once you master this, everything changes. Your confidence becomes quiet. Your decisions become cleaner. Your presence becomes heavier. You stop leaking energy. You stop being played. You stop losing first. And once you stop reacting, you begin to see clearly. You see patterns, you see intentions, you see opportunities others miss because they're too busy failing. You've learned how to stop reacting. Now it's time to understand what replaces reaction. Calm, not weakness, not passivity, a weapon. Chapter 2, Calm is a weapon, not a mood. Most people misunderstand calm. They think calm is softness. They think calm means you don't care. They think calm is something you feel when life is easy. That belief keeps them weak. Calm is not a mood. Calm is a weapon. That's the key. Calm is what allows you to think when others panic. Calm is what allows you to decide when others react. Calm is what allows you to win when others are busy feeling. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Say that again. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Look at any leader who operates at a high level. CEOs, investors, commanders, strategists. They don't rush. They don't spike emotionally. They don't show everything they feel, not because they are emotionless, but because they are trained. Calm is trained. You have a choice. You can let pressure control your state, or you can control your state under pressure. Most people let circumstances decide how they feel. Traffic decides their mood. Messages decide their confidence. Opinions decide their self-worth. That is not strength. That is slavery. Calm people are not calm because life is easy. They are calm because they have decided not to be ruled by chaos. That's the key. When pressure hits, emotional people speed up. They talk more, they move faster, they make worse decisions. Calm people slow down, and whoever controls the pace controls the outcome. In negotiations, the calm one sets the terms. In conflict, the calm one controls the frame. In crisis, the calm one becomes the leader. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Dangerous does not mean violent. Dangerous means effective. It means you cannot be rushed. You cannot be baited. You cannot be emotionally hijacked. This is why emotional neutrality is so powerful. Neutrality does not mean weakness. It means flexibility. When you're neutral, you can choose aggression or restraint. When you're emotional, the emotion chooses for you. It's not about passion, it's about discipline. That's the key. Let S be clear. Calm does not mean passive. Calm does not mean silent forever. Calm does not mean you let things slide. Calm means you respond on your terms. You decide when to speak. You decide when to act. You decide when to apply pressure. You don't need their permission. Most people confuse intensity with power. They think being intense makes them effective. It doesn't. Intensity without control is chaos. Emotion without discipline is noise. High performers understand this early. They build the ability to stay internally calm while externally decisive. Inside, calm. Outside, precise action. That combination is rare, and rarity is value. You have a choice. You can train calm, or you can keep letting life shake you. Here's a hard truth. If small things disturb your calm, big things will destroy you. That's not an insult, that's a warning. Calm is built in small moments. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when someone sends a disrespectful message, when plans fall apart, these are not inconveniences. They are training grounds. Every time you stay calm, you reinforce control. Every time you react, you weaken it. That's the key. Here's a rule you must adopt. Never make decisions at emotional peaks. Not when you're angry, not when you're excited, not when you're afraid. Emotions distort reality. Calm clarifies it. If you feel a spike, pause. If you feel urgency, delay. If you feel pressure, slow your breathing. This is not avoidance. This is strategy. Breathing controls the nervous system. The nervous system controls perception. Perception controls decisions. Control the breath. You control the state, simple, not easy, but simple. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Think about this. Who do people trust in a crisis? The one yelling or the one steady? Who do people follow? The one panicking or the one grounded? Calm creates authority without words. You don't need to announce confidence. You demonstrate it through control. That's the key. Calm also protects you from manipulation. People provoke to gain advantage. They rush you to force mistakes. They pressure you to steal leverage. When you stay calm, their tactics fail. They reveal themselves, they overplay their hand, they lose patience. And patience is power. You don't need to win immediately, you need to win eventually. Calm gives you time, time gives you options, options give you control. It's not about speed, it's about positioning. Most people burn bridges emotionally. They say things they can't take back, they create enemies unnecessarily. Calm people preserve optionality. They don't react today and regret tomorrow. That's the key. Now understand this clearly. Calm will feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind will scream, say something, do something, react now. That discomfort is withdrawal. You are withdrawing from emotional addiction. Stay with it. Silence will feel heavy. Pauses will feel awkward. Control will feel unnatural until it doesn't. Then it becomes who you are. You are not becoming passive. You are becoming precise. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming composed. And composition is what separates leaders from followers. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Say it until it sticks. Because once calm becomes your default, your presence changes. People think twice before challenging you. They listen more closely. They feel your stability, not because you demand respect, but because calm commands it. You have a choice: stay reactive and emotional, or become calm and controlled. One leads to noise, the other leads to dominance. You've learned that calm is a weapon. But a weapon must be aimed. And to aim correctly, you must understand the enemy inside you. Your feelings, you mastered reaction, you learned calm. Now it's time to expose the lie your emotions tell you every day. Chapter 3, your feelings are lying to you. Your feelings feel real. They feel urgent. They feel important. That's why they are dangerous. Feelings are not facts, they are signals, and signals can be misread. That's the key. Most people live as if their emotions are truth. They feel offended, so they believe they were attacked. They feel anxious, so they believe something is wrong. They feel excited, so they believe it's the right move. And then they act. That's how mistakes are made. That's how reputations are damaged. That's how lives stall. Feelings speak loud, results speak last. Say it again. Feelings speak loud, results speak last. Emotions evolved for survival, not success. They exaggerate threats. They invent urgency. They push you to act now, explain now, decide now. Urgency is the lie. You have a choice. You can obey the feeling, or you can question it. High performers question their feelings. Average people obey them. That's the difference. Think about anger. Anger tells you someone crossed a line. Anger tells you to strike back. Anger tells you to restore pride immediately. But anger never tells you the cost. It doesn't tell you what you'll lose tomorrow for what you say today. It doesn't tell you how small you'll look later. It doesn't tell you who's watching. Anger speaks loud. Results speak last. Fear works the same way. Fear tells you to avoid. Fear tells you to delay. Fear tells you to stay comfortable. Fear feels protective. But protection and progress are opposites. It's not about courage, it's about discipline. That's the key. Feelings collapse time. They pull the future into the present and distort it. One bad message feels like a disaster. One awkward moment feels permanent. One mistake feels fatal. None of that is true. But if you act on the feeling, you make it true. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their permission to think. You don't need their permission to choose long-term over short-term relief. Most public embarrassment starts with a private failing, a spike, a trigger, an urge, then a post, a reply, a rant, an explanation, and it lives forever. That's the key. Let's be blunt. If you let feelings drive your actions, you will sabotage yourself repeatedly. Not because you're broken, because you're untrained. Training starts with separation. You are not your feelings, you experience them. That distinction changes everything. When a feeling arises, label it. Anger, fear, insecurity, excitement. Labeling creates distance. Distance creates choice. You have a choice. Once you have choice, you have control. Control is not suppression. Control is sequencing. Feeling first, decision second, action last. Most people reverse it. Feeling, action, regret. Feelings speak loud, results speak last. Here's a rule you must adopt. Never trust a feeling that demands immediate action. If it says now, it's lying. If it says respond, pause. If it says prove yourself, stop. Feelings want relief. Discipline wants results. It's not about sensitivity, it's about discipline. That's the key. Another lie feelings tell you is importance. Your emotions tell you everything is personal, that every comment is about you, that every delay is disrespect. Most of it is. People are distracted, busy, self-absorbed. Your feelings make you the center of the story. Reality rarely agrees. When you act on that lie, you look fragile. You explain yourself. You overcorrect. You chase validation. You don't need their permission. Silence is often the correct response. Waiting is often the correct move. Doing nothing is often the strongest play, but feelings hate stillness. They want motion. That's why stillness is powerful. High performers are not numb. They're selective. They feel everything. They act on little. That ratio is discipline. Here's a practical drill. The next time you feel emotionally charged, do 3 things. First, write down what the feeling wants you to do. Send the message. Say the thing. Quit by explain. Second, write down the likely outcome in 24 hours, not the relief, the cost. Third, wait 1 hour. 1 hour will kill most bad decisions. If after 1 hour the action still aligns with your long-term goals, proceed calmly. Most of the time, the urge disappears. That's the key. The feelings are weather, they pass. Results are architecture, they last. You build results with repeated discipline, not emotional bursts. This is why consistency beats motivation. Motivation is a feeling. Consistency is a system. It's not about intensity, it's about alignment. Align your actions with outcomes, not moods. Feelings speak loud, results speak last. Understand this. People who master emotional control are not colder, they are clearer. They don't argue with reality. They don't dramatize friction. They don't narrate their pain publicly. They move quietly. They adjust privately. They win slowly. And when results arrive, they don't need to explain. That's the key. You have a choice. Let your feelings run your life, or let your values run your actions. Feelings change hourly. Values compound daily. Choose what compounds. As you gain control here, something interesting happens. You stop needing to tell your side of the story. You stop needing to correct everyone. You stop needing to be understood immediately because you trust time. And time favors the disciplined. You mastered reaction. You trained calm. You exposed the lie of failings. Now there's one more trap emotional people fall into: explaining themselves, trying to be understood by people who don't matter. Let's eliminate that weakness next. Chapter 4, Stop explaining yourself and start winning. Explaining yourself feels harmless. It feels polite. It feels mature. It's not. Over-explaining is one of the fastest ways to lose power. That's the key. Every unnecessary explanation reveals insecurity. Every justification hands control to someone else. Every attempt to be understood weakens your position. Strong people do not rush to explain. Weak people can't stop. You have a choice. You can explain to feel better, or you can stay silent and get better results. Most people explain for one reason: they want approval. They want to be seen as reasonable. They want to be liked. They want permission. You don't need their permission. When you explain yourself, you place the listener above you. You subconsciously say, "You get to judge me." That's not confidence, that's submission. It's not about clarity, it's about discipline. Say it again. It's not about clarity, it's about discipline. High performers understand this instinctively. They don't narrate their decisions. They don't justify their boundaries. They don't argue with opinions. They decide, they act, they move on. And the world adjusts. Most people do the opposite. They decide something, then immediately explain it, then defend it, then soften it, and by the end they've talked themselves out of authority. That's the key. Let's talk about where this habit comes from. Explaining yourself is learned, it's trained early. As a child, you were taught to explain to avoid punishment. to justify to avoid conflict, to over-communicate to stay safe. That worked when you were powerless. It does not work when you're trying to build power. What kept you safe will now keep you small. You have a choice. Unlearn it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not confused, they just disagree. And no explanation will change that. When someone questions your decision, you don't owe them a speech. When someone misunderstands you, you don't owe them clarity. When someone doubts you, you don't owe them reassurance. You don't need their permission. Silence forces people to deal with their own discomfort. Explanations remove that discomfort for them and give it to you. That's the key. Watch what happens when you stop explaining. People push back. They ask why. They probe, not because they need information, but because they want leverage. When you stay calm and brief, the power dynamic shifts. A simple statement carries more weight than a paragraph. I've decided. This is what I'm doing. That doesn't work for me. Then stop. No footnotes. No backstory, no emotional padding. Feelings speak loud, results speak last. Explaining is emotional leakage. It's you trying to manage how others feel about your choices. That's not leadership, that's insecurity. Leaders don't manage emotions, they manage direction. Here's where most people panic. They think silence will make them look rude. They think firmness will make them look arrogant. They think brevity will make them look cold. That fear is the trap. Respect is not built through comfort. It's built through consistency. If you explain once, people expect it again. If you justify once, they'll challenge again. If you defend once, they'll attack again. You train people how to treat you. That's the key. Now understand this clearly. Not explaining does not mean being unclear. It means being decisive. Clarity is short. Confusion is long. Over-explaining is not clarity. It's anxiety talking. It's not about communication, it's about control. Here's a practical rule. If your explanation is longer than your decision, stop. If you feel the urge to convince, pause. If you feel the urge to defend, breathe. If you feel the urge to prove, be silent. That silence is you reclaiming authority. You have a choice. Speak to be respected or speak to be liked. You rarely get both. High performers choose respect. Not because they are heartless, because they are disciplined. Think about successful people you admire. They don't overshare. They don't justify their standards. They don't apologize for their ambition. They let outcomes do the talking. That's the key. Another reason people explain is guilt. They feel guilty for choosing themselves, for saying no, for setting boundaries. That guilt is misplaced. Boundaries are not punishments. They are filters. They protect your energy, your focus, your future. You don't need to explain why you value your time. You show it by how you use it. You don't need to explain your standards. You enforce them. Silence backed by consistency is unstoppable. It's not about kindness, it's about discipline. Now let's talk about winning. Winners do not argue with opinions. They build results that make opinions irrelevant. Every minute spent explaining is a minute not executing. Every ounce of energy spent defending is energy stolen from progress. That's the real cost. Most people lose not because they chose wrong, but because they talked too much after choosing. They diluted their decision. They negotiated with doubt. They invited resistance. Stop doing that. Decide once. Execute daily. Let results close mouths. That's the key. You have a choice. Explain yourself into exhaustion or let silence sharpen your presence. When you stop explaining, you notice something powerful. People listen more carefully when you speak. Your words carry weight. Your no becomes final, not because you're louder, because you're grounded. That grounding is emotional control in action. You mastered reaction. You trained calm. You stopped believing your failings. You stopped explaining yourself. Now we move into the next level of discipline, what you do when no one is watching. Because real power is not built in public, it's built in private. Chapter 5, Discipline is built when no one is watching. Most people perform when they're being seen. They work harder when someone is watching. They behave better when there's an audience. That's not discipline, that's performance. Real discipline lives in private. That's the key. What you do alone defines what you become publicly. What you repeat quietly shapes what shows up loudly. You have a choice. You can train discipline when it's convenient, or you can train it when it's uncomfortable. Only one of those builds power. Discipline is not motivation. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is mechanical. Motivation shows up randomly. Discipline shows up daily. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. That's the key. Most people wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel confident. Winners don't wait. They act without permission from their feelings. You don't need their permission. You don't even need your own permission. You need standards. Standards are rules you follow even when no one is rewarding you, especially when no one is watching. That's discipline. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your private habits are leaking into your public results. The shortcuts you take alone show up as weakness later. The excuses you allow privately become limitations publicly. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That's the key. Look at how most people live. They are disciplined only when there's pressure. Deadlines, consequences, eyes on them, remove the pressure and they drift. Scroll more, delay more, quit easier. That's not a character flaw, it's a lack of training. Discipline is trained the same way muscles are trained. Small resistance. Repeated daily. Long-term growth. You don't build discipline with heroic effort. You build it with boring repetition. It's not about willpower, it's about structure. That's the key. Let's break discipline down. Discipline is doing what needs to be done even when there's no applause, no recognition, and no immediate reward. That's why most people avoid it, because discipline doesn't feel good in the moment. It feels quiet. It feels lonely. It feels invisible. But invisible work creates visible results. You have a choice. Chase visible pleasure now, or invest in invisible progress daily. One feels better today, the other changes your life. Most people choose comfort in private, then demand success in public. That equation never works. Discipline reverses it. Discipline demands discomfort in private so you earn comfort later. That's the key. Here's a rule to adopt immediately. Do at least one hard thing every day that no one will praise you for. No posting it. No telling anyone. No tracking likes. Just execution. This trains internal authority. You stop needing validation. You stop relying on motivation. You stop negotiating with yourself. That's power. Another rule: decide once. Execute many times. Most people decide every day. Should I work today? Should I train today? Should I focus today? That question is weakness. Decide once. Then remove the question. Discipline is not thinking. It's obeying the decision you already made. You have a choice. Be the person who negotiates daily, or be the person who executes automatically. Automation beats emotion. That's the key. Now let's talk about boredom. Boredom is where discipline is forged. When there's nothing exciting, when progress is slow, when results aren't visible, that's when most people quit, not because it's hard, but because it's quiet. Quiet progress doesn't stimulate the ego. There's no rush, no praise, but quiet progress compounds. Winners fall in love with boring consistency. Losers chase emotional highs. It's not about talent, it's about tolerance for boredom. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to be boring. You don't need approval to be consistent. You don't need validation to stay on track. Your future doesn't care how you felt today, it cares what you repeated. That's the key. Another private discipline most people ignore: self-talk. What you say to yourself when no one hears matters. Most people are soft in private and loud in public. Winners are strict in private and calm in public. They don't motivate themselves with hype. They correct themselves with truth. Do the work. Stay focused. Finish what you started. No drama, no emotion. That internal voice becomes your backbone. Discipline starts there. If you lie to yourself privately, you'll fail publicly. That's the key. Let's address excuses. Excuses feel harmless when spoken alone, but every excuse weakens your self-trust. Say enough excuses and your mind stops believing you. Discipline restores self-trust. Every small promise kept to yourself builds credibility. Miss enough promises and you become unreliable to yourself. You have a choice: become someone you trust or someone who keeps letting themselves down. That choice is made daily. In private, discipline is not about perfection, it's about follow-through. Miss a day, return the next. No guilt, no drama, just return. That ability to return without emotion is elite discipline. That's the key. Understand this deeply. No one is coming to save you in private. There is no coach, no audience, no countdown, just you and your standards, and those standards decide your ceiling. You don't need their permission to raise them. Discipline is lonely at first, because most people don't live there, but loneliness fades, strength remains, and eventually results catch up. Quietly, suddenly, you mastered reaction, you trained calm. You stopped believing feelings, you stopped explaining yourself, you built private discipline. Now comes the test. What happens when your discipline clashes with your need for approval? Because validation is the next trap and it's expensive. Chapter 6, The Silent Cost of Seeking Validation. Validation feels harmless. It feels social. It feels human. It's not. Validation is one of the most expensive addictions you can have. That's the key. Every time you seek approval, you hand someone else control over your emotional state. Every time you wait for praise, you delay progress. Every time you need to be seen, you stop seeing clearly. You have a choice: live from internal standards or live from external approval. One builds power, the other drains it quietly. Most people don't realize they are addicted. They call it feedback, they call it connection, they call it sharing. But underneath, it's the same pattern. Do you see me? Do you approve? Am I okay? That question keeps people average. That's the key. Validation is external control disguised as encouragement. When your mood improves based on likes, your confidence rises based on compliments, your motivation depends on applause, you are not in control, you are managed, and the world will manage you poorly. High performers understand this early. They detach from praise the same way they detach from criticism. Why? Because both are distractions. It's not about confidence, it's about confidence that depends on validation is fragile. Discipline that depends on standards is stable. Most people crave validation because they don't trust themselves. They outsource judgment. They wait for permission. You don't need their permission. You don't need agreement to proceed. You don't need applause to continue. You don't need reassurance to stay consistent. Needing validation turns decisions into negotiations. And negotiations create hesitation. That hesitation costs time. Time costs momentum. Momentum costs success. That's the silent cost. Look at how validation changes behavior. People post instead of building. They announce instead of executing. They talk instead of training. Why? Because validation gives instant reward. Progress gives delayed reward. The brain chooses fast pleasure over long-term gain unless trained otherwise. That's the key. Validation is emotional sugar. It tastes good. It feels good, but it rots discipline. Every time you seek validation, ask yourself one question: would I still do this if no one ever noticed? If the answer is no, you're not building strength, you're feeding the ego. Ego wants attention, discipline wants results. You have a choice. Here's a hard truth. The people who clap for you today will disappear when results take too long. If your fuel is applause, you will quit when silence arrives. And silence always arrives. That's why winners learn to operate without feedback. They don't need constant encouragement. They don't need to be understood. They don't need to be celebrated. They measure themselves against the standard, not the crowd. That's the key. Validation also creates fear. Fear of judgment, fear of misunderstanding, fear of being disliked. So people play safe. They dilute opinions. They soften ambition. They don't want to upset anyone. And in trying to offend no one, they become invisible. You don't need their permission to be focused. You don't need approval to be intense. You don't need validation to be serious about your life. Another cost of validation is comparison. When your worth is external, you constantly scan others. Who's ahead? Who's praised? Who's winning publicly? Comparison creates insecurity. Insecurity creates reaction. Reaction destroys discipline. That's the chain. High performers break it by detaching early. They understand this rule: if you look sideways, you slow forward progress. Eyes forward. Standards internal. That's discipline. Now let's talk about social media, because this is where validation addiction is strongest. Likes are not feedback, views are not value, comments are not truth, they are noise. If you build your identity on noise, you will never hear your own direction. That's the key. Here's a practical discipline to install immediately. Do important work before consuming feedback. Create before you scroll. Execute before you check. Build before you share. This reverses the validation loop. Another rule: stop announcing goals, start tracking actions. Announcing goals gives premature validation. It tricks the brain into thinking progress has been made. Silence keeps hunger alive. Let hunger work for you. You have a choice: be seen early or be respected later. Most people choose early visibility. Winners choose delayed recognition. And when recognition finally comes, it's heavier, it lasts longer, it doesn't require maintenance. That's the key. Validation also weakens boundaries. When you want approval, you say yes when you should say no. You tolerate disrespect. You overextend. Discipline says no without apology. Validation says yes with resentment. Choose discipline. It's not about being liked, it's about being aligned. Alignment with your goals, alignment with your values, alignment with your long-term vision. People may not understand that. They don't need to. You don't need their permission. Understand this deeply. Seeking validation is seeking safety, and safety is the enemy of growth. Growth requires discomfort. Discomfort requires independence. Independence requires internal validation. You decide if you're on track. You decide if the work is enough. You decide if today counts. That's power. Here's the shift you must make. Replace the question, "Do they approve?" with, "Did I execute?" Execution is binary. You did it, or you didn't. No opinions needed. That's the key. As you reduce validation seeking, your focus sharpens. You stop checking reactions. You stop managing perception. You stop explaining motives. You become quieter, heavier, more grounded, and something interesting happens. People start seeking your approval not because you demanded it, because discipline is magnetic. You mastered reaction. You trained calm. You stopped believing feelings. You stopped explaining yourself. You built discipline in private. You cut the addiction to validation. Now you are ready for the next level, detachment. Because to dominate emotionally, you must learn to let go. Not emotionally collapse, but emotionally detach. That's where clarity lives. Chapter 7, Detach to Dominate. Most people hear the word detach and panic. They think it means not caring. They think it means giving up. They think it means emotional emptiness. It doesn't. Detachment is not weakness. Detachment is leverage. That's the key. Detachment means you care about the process, not the emotional outcome. It means you commit to the action, not the immediate result. It means you stay steady while others spiral. Detached minds win emotional battles. Say it again. Detached minds win emotional battles. Most people are emotionally attached to outcomes. They need things to go a certain way to feel okay. They need approval to feel confident. They need quick wins to stay motivated. That attachment makes them fragile. When outcomes do arrive, they collapse. When plans fail, they panic. When progress slows, they quit. You have a choice: attach to outcomes or detach and dominate. High performers choose detachment early. Why? Because attachment creates fear. Fear creates hesitation. Hesitation creates mistakes. Detachment removes fear. That's the key. When you detach, you stop begging life for guarantees. You stop needing certainty before action. You stop emotionally negotiating with reality. You act because it's correct, not because it feels safe. It's not about apathy, it's about discipline. Most people confuse emotional intensity with commitment. They think caring deeply means reacting emotionally. It doesn't. Real commitment is calm execution under uncertainty. Look at elite performers. Athletes, surgeons, investors. They are not emotionally attached in the moment of execution. They are focused, present, controlled. Emotion is managed. Attachment is removed. That's how precision happens. Detached minds win emotional battles. Here's where detachment really matters: failure. When you're attached, failure feels personal. It feels like a judgment. It feels like proof you're not enough, so you avoid risk. You play small. You protect your ego. Detachment changes that. Failure becomes data, feedback, information, not identity. You don't say, I failed. You say, that didn't work. That language matters. It creates distance. Distance creates clarity. Clarity creates improvement. That's the key. Detachment also protects you from success. Yes, success. When people attach emotionally to wins, they get sloppy. They chase the high. They over-celebrate. They lose discipline. Detached people treat wins like checkpoints, not destinations. They acknowledge them. Then they return to work. No emotional spike, no ego inflation, just consistency. You have a choice. Ride emotional highs and crash later, or stay level and compound quietly. Compounding requires detachment. Let's talk about relationships because this is where attachment does the most damage. When you're emotionally attached, you fear losing people, you tolerate disrespect, you explain too much. Detachment restores boundaries. You stop clinging, you stop chasing, you stop adjusting yourself to be accepted. You don't need their permission. Detached people are not cold, they are selective. They choose where to invest energy. They choose what deserves reaction. They choose when to walk away. That choice is power. It's not about indifference, it's about discipline. Now let's get practical. Here's a rule to install immediately. Detach from outcomes you cannot control. You cannot control opinions. You cannot control timing. You cannot control other people's emotions. So stop emotionally investing in them. Invest in inputs. Effort, consistency, preparation. Those are under your control. That's the key. Another rule, care deeply about execution, care lightly about results. This sounds backwards to most people, but execution compounds, results lag. If you emotionally attach to results, you'll quit before compounding works. Detached people stay long enough to win. You have a choice. Here's another trap attachment creates: overthinking. When outcomes matter too much emotionally, your mind races. What if it fails? What if they judge me? What if I'm wrong? That noise kills action. Detachment quiets the mind. When you accept uncertainty, thinking simplifies. What's the next correct action? Then you do it. No drama, no story. That's discipline. Detachment also makes you unpredictable. When people can't read your emotional investment, they can't manipulate you. They can't bait you with approval. They can't threaten you with disapproval. You become hard to move emotionally. That's dangerous in the best way. Detached minds win emotional battles. Let's address a common fear. People think detachment will make them unmotivated. The opposite is true. Attachment drains energy because it creates emotional swings. Highs exhaust you, lows paralyze you, detachment stabilizes energy. Stable energy beats intense energy. Every time, it's not about passion, it's about endurance. That's the key. Here's a daily discipline to practice detachment. At the end of each day, ask yourself one question. Did I do what I said I would do? Not, did I feel good? Did I get praise? Did it work today? Just execution. This trains your mind to value action over emotion. Over time, you stop reacting to outcomes. You start trusting the process. Trust is calm. Calm is power. Another discipline, stop mentally rehearsing outcomes. Most people live in imaginary futures. Winning scenarios, failure scenarios, both waste energy. Stay in the present task. Detach from future fantasies. Detach from future fears. Do the work in front of you. That's domination. You don't need their permission to be focused. You don't need certainty to move. You don't need guarantees to commit. Detachment is saying, I will act correctly regardless of outcome. That mindset is rare, and rarity is advantage. As you practice detachment, you'll notice something shift. You become harder to provoke, harder to rush, harder to destabilize. People feel it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. Because emotionally stable people are dangerous in a world addicted to reaction. You mastered reaction, you trained calm, you stopped believing feelings, you stopped explaining yourself, you built private discipline, you cut the addiction to validation, you learned detachment. Now comes refinement, silence. Because once you detach emotionally, you realize something powerful: not everything needs to be said. And silence, used correctly, becomes your final advantage. Chapter 8: Why Quiet People Always Outperform Loud Ones. Noise looks like confidence. Silence looks like uncertainty. That's what most people believe. They're wrong. Quiet is not weakness. Quiet is control. That's the key. Loud people try to dominate attention. Quiet people dominate outcomes. Loud people talk to be seen. Quiet people move to win. And in the long run, results always outrank volume. Noise wastes power. Silence compounds it. Say it again. Noise wastes power. Silence compounds it. Look closely at who talks the most. They explain, they argue, they announce, they react. They are constantly managing perception. Quiet people don't manage perception, they manage direction. That's the difference. You have a choice: be loud and visible, or be quiet and effective. One feels powerful, the other is powerful. Most people are loud because they are unsure. They talk to convince. They talk to defend. They talk to feel relevant. Silence doesn't need justification. Silence assumes authority. That's the key. Quiet people listen more than they speak. And because they listen, they see patterns others miss. They notice tone, they notice timing, they notice intent. Loud people miss all of that. They're too busy talking. Listening is a competitive advantage. It gives you information. Information gives you leverage. Leverage gives you control. That's discipline. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Silence is uncomfortable for most people. It exposes insecurity. It removes distraction. That's why people fill space with words. They fear being misunderstood. They fear being ignored. They fear losing control of the narrative. Quiet people don't fear that. They don't need to control the narrative. They let results do it for them. You don't need their permission. Another truth: the more you speak, the more you reveal your plans, your doubts, your weaknesses. Quiet people reveal nothing unnecessary. They keep their strategy private. They keep their emotions contained. They keep their next move unseen. That makes them unpredictable. Unpredictability is power. That's the key. Think about arguments. The loud one escalates. The quiet one observes. The loud one wants to win the moment. The quiet one wants to win the position. When you stay quiet, the other person fills the silence. They talk more. They reveal more. They overcommit. Silence makes people expose themselves. That's not manipulation. That's patience. Patience beats aggression. Every time. Noise wastes power. Silence compounds it. Quiet people also recover faster. When something goes wrong, loud people complain. They vent. They broadcast frustration. That locks them into the problem. Quiet people process privately. They adjust. They move forward. No drama, no spectacle. Progress doesn't need witnesses. That's discipline. You have a choice: react publicly or correct privately. One feeds ego, the other feeds results. Now let's talk about work. Loud workers talk about being busy. Quiet workers produce. Loud workers announce plans. Quiet workers execute. Loud workers seek credit. Quiet workers let output speak. Guess who advances? Quiet people don't need to remind others of their value. Their value becomes obvious over time. That's the key. Silence also protects focus. Every word costs energy. Every explanation drains attention. Every argument steals time. Quiet people conserve energy. They use it where it matters. Focus is finite. Spend it carefully. It's not about expression, it's about efficiency. Now let's be clear. Quiet does not mean passive. Quiet does not mean weak. Quiet does not mean invisible. Quiet means selective. Selective speech, selective reaction, selective engagement. Quiet people speak when it matters, and because they speak rarely, their words carry weight. When quiet people speak, rooms listen. That's power. You don't need their permission to be quiet. You don't need approval to hold silence. You don't need validation to let others talk. Silence is a skill, and like all skills, it feels awkward at first. Your mind will tell you to fill the gap, to explain, to soften. Resist that urge. That urge is weakness leaving the body. That's the key. Here's a rule to practice immediately. Say less than you feel like saying. Every conversation, every message, every meeting. Cut your words in half, then cut them again. Clarity improves. Authority increases. Another rule: never speak to relieve tension. If you're speaking to ease discomfort, stop. If you're speaking to be liked, pause. If you're speaking to avoid silence, don't. Let silence do its work. Silence creates gravity. That gravity pulls respect toward you. Quiet people are not in a hurry. They don't rush responses. They don't rush decisions. Speed exposes insecurity. Calm timing signals control. That's the key. Silence also makes you resilient. Insults land softer. Provocation loses power. Criticism fades faster because you're not feeding it. What you don't feed dies. Loud people keep problems alive by talking about them. Quiet people starve problems by ignoring them. Choose wisely. Noise wastes power. Silence compounds it. As you grow quieter, you'll notice resistance. People will try to pull you into noise, into arguments, into explanations. They want access to your energy. You don't owe it to them. You have a choice. Protect your energy or spend it entertaining others. Quiet people protect it, and because of that, they last longer. Longevity beats intensity. Always, you mastered reaction, you trained calm, you stopped believing feelings, you stopped explaining yourself. You built discipline in private, you cut validation, you learned detachment, you embraced silence. Now there is one final test, the ultimate one: control yourself completely or be controlled by life. Because if you don't command your inner world, the outer world will command you, and it will not be kind. Chapter 9, Control Yourself or Be Controlled by Life. Most people think life controls them. They think circumstances decide their mood. They think other people dictate their reactions. They are wrong. Life is not controlling you. You are letting life control you. That's the key. Every day, billions of tiny choices happen. Do you check your phone immediately? Do you react to criticism? Do you follow your plan or give in to impulse? Each small choice compounds. Each small surrender shifts the balance of power. And most people surrender without realizing it. They complain about circumstances. They blame others. They justify inaction. That's weakness masquerading as reasoning. You have a choice. Control yourself or be controlled. Let's be clear. Control is not perfection. Control is consistency. Control is awareness. Control is the ability to respond rather than react. Reaction is surrender. Control is power. You've already learned to detach. You've already trained silence. You've already mastered emotional discipline. Now it's time to unify it. The world will constantly test you. Traffic, deadlines, disrespect, financial pressure, health struggles. Every test is an opportunity or a trap. Reactive people fail the test. Controlled people pass it. Here's the truth: you cannot control the outside world. You cannot control other people's opinions. You cannot control the economy, the market, or outcomes, but you can control yourself, your effort, your focus, your reactions. That's the leverage point. That's where power lives. High performers internalize this. They obsess over what's inside, not outside. They control the controllable. They adapt to the uncontrollable. And they thrive in chaos while others panic. You have a choice: react to life or respond to life. Reaction is emotional. Response is strategic. Reaction wastes energy. Response invests energy. Reaction is short-term relief. Response is long-term gain. That's the key. Let's talk about self-mastery in daily life. Most people leave their mornings to chance. They wake up and scroll. They react to notifications. They chase external stimulation. That's being controlled by life. Controlled people design their day. They start with purpose. They choose inputs, not impulses. They decide energy allocation before the world decides it for them. Energy is a limited resource. Control it and you dominate. Lose it and the day dominates you. Every emotional spike you indulge is a loss of control. Every time you let fear or excitement dictate action, you surrender. You have a choice. This extends to work. Most people chase deadlines instead of executing systems. They chase recognition instead of mastering skills. They chase approval instead of building internal standards. Controlled people ignore external noise. They focus on consistent execution. They master themselves, and life bends to that mastery. That's the key. Let's discuss relationships. Reactive people let anger, pride, and insecurity rule interactions. They explain, they defend, they overcommit, they overreact. Controlled people observe, pause, and respond strategically. They maintain boundaries, they preserve energy, they avoid drama. You don't need their permission to protect yourself. You don't need approval to uphold your standards. Every interaction is a choice. Choose control or choose chaos. Now consider finance. Reactive people spend impulsively. They chase trends. They follow emotional highs and lows. Controlled people plan, they save, they invest, they follow a system. Control compounds over time. Reaction compounds losses. That's the key. You have a choice in health too. React to cravings, react to fatigue, react to emotions, or control your diet, exercise, sleep, and habits. Control yourself once and every system in your life stabilizes. Lose control and everything unravels. The ultimate lesson: life will never go according to plan. Circumstances will never be fair. People will never meet your expectations. The only thing you can fully command is yourself. This is your battlefield, your mind, your body, your habits, your attention. Every time you allow a small surrender, a reaction, a distraction, a justification, you give up power. Every time you reclaim control by pausing, by acting deliberately, by ignoring noise, you gain power. You have a choice. Control yourself or be controlled by life. And here's the brutal truth. Those who refuse to control themselves will live under life's terms. They will react, panic, complain, and fail. They will let fear dictate. They will let distractions steal. They will let emotion govern. Controlled people carve their path. They dominate outcomes without needing anyone's approval. They execute in silence. They thrive under pressure. They compound results while others chase attention. Control yourself, your emotions, your actions, your focus. Start small. Command the first hour of your day. Command your next reaction. Command your next decision, then the next. Then the next. Control becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity becomes results. And results, real results, speak louder than anything else. You mastered reaction. You trained calm. You stopped believing feelings. You stopped explaining yourself. You built private discipline. You cut validation. You learned detachment. You embraced silence. Now you have the final tool: complete self-control. Master it and nothing in life can dominate you. Next, we will reveal the last principle, the one that unites all these lessons into unstoppable action. Chapter 10, Become Untouchable. You've come a long way. You've mastered reaction. You've trained calm. You've stopped believing feelings. You've stopped explaining yourself. You've built private discipline. You've cut the need for validation. You've learned detachment. You've embraced silence. You've taken control of yourself. Now it's time for the final step. To become untouchable. That's the key. Being untouchable is not about being invincible. It's not about avoiding problems. It's not about hiding from life. It's about mastery, emotional mastery, mental mastery, self-mastery. Life pressures don't disappear. Debt, conflict, deadlines, betrayal, chaos, they still exist. What changes is your reaction, your response, your equilibrium. You have a choice. React and be tossed around like everyone else, or respond and remain anchored while storms rage. Nothing outside controls me. Say it again. Nothing outside controls me. That phrase is not a mantra. It's a law, a principle of power. Untouchable people are unreadable. They don't give emotional cues. They don't overshare. They don't seek approval. Predictability is for the weak. Unpredictability is power. People who try to manipulate you rely on your emotional signals. They count on you reacting. They count on your anger, fear, or need for approval. Remove the signal, remove the leverage, become untouchable. That's the key. Untouchable people are resilient. Pressure does not break them. Criticism does not shake them. Failure does not derail them because their foundation is internal, built in private, forged through repetition, hardened by discipline. Here's how you cultivate untouchability. First, own your emotional state, not just in public, not just around friends, every moment. Every conversation, every thought. Do not let a text, a call, a comment, or an event hijack your energy. Nothing outside controls you. Second, anchor yourself in principles, not outcomes. Principles guide behavior when emotions and results fluctuate. Outcomes are temporary, principles last, discipline over mood, consistency over excitement, execution over praise. Third, operate silently, execute without broadcasting, achieve without announcing, influence without explaining. Silent execution confuses competitors and strengthens credibility. Fourth, train your mind to observe, not react. Detach emotionally from provocations. See them, acknowledge them, then act strategically. Detach to dominate. Fifth, build habits that reinforce control. Your daily routines, your work ethic, your internal dialogue, these are the scaffolding of untouchability. Miss them and the scaffolding collapses. Maintain them and no external pressure topples you. Untouchable people are not immune to stress. They feel frustration, they feel fear, they feel disappointment, but they do not act on it, they contain it, they channel it, they convert it into fuel for execution. Nothing outside controls me. Say it again, internalize it, live it, breathe it. You cannot control life. You cannot control other people. You cannot control outcomes. You can control yourself. That control compounds, it amplifies, it protects. And when you master it, people notice. Not because you boast, not because you demand respect, because your stability forces respect. Untouchable people make others uncomfortable strategically. They do not overreact, they do not explain, they do not seek validation. This is why emotional mastery is power, because it creates presence. It creates authority. It creates influence without effort. You have a choice. Remain touchable, react to every slight, seek approval constantly, explain yourself endlessly, or become untouchable, silent. Controlled, consistent, immovable. Every habit you've built in this book leads here. Every principle compounds into this state. Every small act of self-control adds weight to your presence. Untouchable is the sum of everything you've learned. It is resilience made visible. It is focus made unstoppable. It is discipline made undeniable. Life will still challenge you. People will still test you. Problems will still arise. But you, anchored, disciplined, detached, will remain untouchable. Nothing outside controls me. Repeat it, believe it, live it. And now, as the book closes, here is your final challenge. Take everything you've learned, apply it daily. Refuse to react, refuse to seek approval, refuse to be controlled by feelings, opinions, or circumstances. Become untouchable. Your life will never be the same. You mastered yourself. Now master everything else. This is your moment, your choice, your power. Nothing outside controls me. And that is how you win quietly. Your emotions are not your identity. They are habits, and habits can be broken. Every time you choose calm over reaction, silence over explanation, discipline over impulse, you separate yourself from the average. The world rewards the emotionally controlled. It exploits the emotionally reactive. From this moment forward, you do not react, you observe. You do not explain, you execute. You do not chase, you build. Listen to this audiobook again. Train it into your nervous system. And the next time life tests you, stay calm and let the results speak. If this audiobook sharpened your mind, subscribe, save it, and return to it until control becomes automatic.